Good morning, everybody, and welcome to church. If we haven't met, my name is Jason, and I'm one of the pastors here, and I'm so honored that you would take time to join us this weekend. This is an awesome weekend for you to join us. We're wrapping up a series today that we started a couple weeks ago called This Is How We Change the World, and I'm so excited. Like you just saw the video. Those are little clips of what you're doing. And you say, well, I haven't been to those places. Well, yes, you have. When you give and when you pray and when you're a part of this church, we get to make a huge difference in the world, and I hope over the last few weeks you've seen that. Now we say this at Access, this is the best day of the week. Sundays are our favorite day, but the truth is, the reason Sundays are our favorite day is because you're here and because God is with us. And so I really believe that today is going to be a special day as we dig in to this message together. Now we're wrapping up the summer, and so before we jump into some things, let me tell you about a few things that are coming up that I just want you to hear from me. Next Sunday, we start a series that I've been pumped about for months. It's a series called Four Cups, and we're going to look at an ancient Jewish practice together. And for the next 4 weeks, I believe that we're going to, number one, experience God in a new way. I believe some of you are going to experience freedom in a way that you've never experienced before. And as a result, I believe that God is going to unleash you. You're going to discover your purpose and just live it to make a difference in the world. And so I'm asking you to do me a favor and be here for the next 4 weeks, but don't come alone. Let's see a lot of people find freedom and discover their purpose so that they can make a difference with their life. And that starts next Sunday. That's going to be fun. Beyond that, we've been in a series where we've been talking about how we change the world. Let me give you some opportunities that you can actually go to change the world. Now, we have one trip still coming up this year. We're going to Chiapas, Mexico. We have a construction trip. It's October 22 through 28. And if you would like to go on that trip, we still have a couple slots left. And we had some people in our church step up that we can even maybe help financially if you'd like to go, but you can't make ends meet or you can't make it make sense. All you have to do, write this down if you're interested in going on this trip, is email Ryan@access.tv. Ryan@access.tv. You can say, I want to go to Chiapas, or just do me a favor and send him the funniest meme you've got, and let's just blow his inbox up. That would mean the world to me, so do that for me. Beyond that, here are the trips next year. I want you to go next year, so start planning and start saving right now. The first one is this. We have our Access youth, our teenagers, middle and high school, and I believe this is going to be for high school and college students. We have a trip going to Honduras to Kids Ark International. It's spring break, March 24 through 30. So if you're in high school or college, plan to go with us on that. Then we have another trip that's it's open to everybody. If you have kids, this is an awesome trip to bring your kids on if you want them to see the world. It's going to the same place in Honduras. We'll be doing a VBS camp and serving in orphanages there. That's going to be awesome, and that's June 2 through 8. And then this year, for the first time, we went to Kenya. Amazing trip, and we're going back next year. This is a men's trip. It's July 10 through 18. Some women have said, well, why can't we go? We're working on it, ladies. We'll get back to you on that, but this one is for guys only, so mark those days down. That's an expensive trip, so save, because that one's over $3,000 to go. And then we're going to go back next year to Chiapas, Mexico. We'll do another trip. Now, this is fun because for the first time ever, we're going to add to our construction and we're going to do medical work. And so if you serve in any medical field at all, which excludes me because I get squeamish when I get a shot, you know what I mean? And so, but if you're good with that and you want to go, I mean, it's amazing what we can accomplish in a week together. So plan to go on these trips. It's going to be amazing. Again, here's kind of an overview of all the 5 trips that are coming up over the next 13 or 14 months. I would love for you to go on these. And here's the truth. When we go overseas, we think we're going to change the world, but the truth is God always changes us. Like, we go to make a difference, but the truth is we're the ones that come back changed, and so I would love for you to go on that trip. Now, if you've missed any of the series, allow me just 30 seconds to catch you up. We've been asking this question: how do we collectively change the world? You see, it's really easy at times to get nearsighted, to get short-sighted, and to only see what's happening here. But the truth is that when you're a part of this church, you're a part of the global church. And when you're a part of the global church, you're making a difference that reaches far beyond our walls, far beyond Lakeland, far beyond those who are in Brandon. Like, we're really changing the world together. So 2 weeks ago, we had Randy Herring, who was our missionary to Honduras, come and speak. And this was amazing to me. During his talk, he said, we need about $5,000 to buy chairs for a building that our church helped to build. So after the service, I just got up and said, hey, let's do it. Let's just give the money now. And you stepped up and you gave over $5,000. You gave like $5,600. And so we were able to bless him with those chairs. And I was just like, let's just go. Like, we didn't plan it. It's just like, let's just go and let's give and let's make a difference in this way. Then the next week, we had our missionary, Wayne Derry, who's a missionary to Africa, come. And during his talk, he talked about a need that he has. He desperately needs a truck. He says he spends over $6,000 a year just renting vehicles while he's there. It costs about $8,000 to build a church. If someone gave him a vehicle, he could build another church a year out of it. And so because of the generosity of some people in our church, if you were here last week, you heard we were able to bless Wayne with all the money that he needs for a truck and for 2 churches. And it's amazing to see what God is doing. I love it. I love it. Now, all throughout this series, I've just been wrestling with this question personally, and I want to challenge you with it. Here's the question. As a result of what we've seen and what we've experienced together, here's the question. What will you do that will outlive you? Like, when you think back across the span of your years someday, what will you do that will outlive you? And there's certainly a lot of things that you can do that will outlive you outside of the church. Like, you can raise a good family. Let me say it to you like this about your family. Maybe the greatest thing you will ever accomplish is not something you do, but someone that you raise. Maybe it's important for you to think about your family through that lens. So our family is certainly a way that we can change the world. I believe that we change the world through our dreams. We can create dreams that help others, that empower others, that set others free, that create income and wealth and changes a generation. Like, we can do things through our dreams that matter. But through the local church, I was asking this question again this week. What will you do that outlives you? And I thought of 4 different things that all of us can do. The first one is we can give. And I hope you've seen over the last few weeks that when we give, it literally leaves these walls and changes the world. So your giving, it really matters. Like, it really changes the world. And I said this earlier, like, our church is going to continue to go at the speed of the generosity of our church. This week, I had coffee with another pastor and one of the pastors on our staff. And the other pastor was talking about you. And this is what he said. He goes, it's like there's been this wave of generosity. It's like it's swelling. It's like people are getting a hold of it and it's contagious. And what's happening as a result is people are just letting go of the hold of materialism, and unbelievable things are happening because of your generosity. So as we give, it changes the world. Number 2 is we can serve. And this summer has been amazing. So many people have taken that step in our church and serving other people. Now, as a church, we as a culture, not just as our church, but as a culture, we don't really talk about heaven that much. When I was a kid growing up in church and in Sunday school as a kid, felt like we always talked about heaven. Like, we were excited about heaven. The songs we sang were about heaven. And I remember as a kid always hearing this thought taught, that there would be a day when you were in heaven, and if you had been a part of someone else coming to faith in Jesus, whether that meant you shared your story and your testimony, whether that meant you prayed with them and led them to Jesus yourself, or maybe it was that you were a part of a team effort collectively to help people come to know Jesus, that there would be a day when you'd get to heaven and people would be lined up to talk to you, to thank you for what you did. And I still feel like that every Sunday when I come to our church. When I see people showing up early so they can come and they can set up. You realize we meet in a high school here in Lakeland and we meet at a YMCA in Brandon. It's not a special place. We come and we transform an ordinary place into a place where the supernatural can happen. And so when you serve, whether it's setting up or loving on children in our children's areas, or working with Access Youth, or leading an Access group, or being involved in praise and worship, or serving those who are entering by creating a hospitable environment. When you serve, you are playing a part in someone coming to know Jesus. What will you do that will outlive you? You're thinking eternally. The third thing is you can go, and I just read off a list of 5 trips that are coming up through our church. We'd love for you to go. If you're like, man, I want to, but I can't. Don't let money be the reason you don't go. We want you to go, and we'll literally do everything we can to help you go. And number 4 is this, is you can share. You can share your faith. And that's really what I want to talk about today. What will you do that will outlive you? What is the thing that you can do that's going to leave a legacy? What is the thing that you can do personally that will change someone else's eternity forever? That's what I want to talk about today. Now, here's the truth. I tend to preach this same message about once a year. So if you've heard this before, I'm asking you to lean in and just ask God to help reveal something new to you. But beyond that, this is the message that I preach once a year that I usually end up losing a few people, that there's usually a few very very select people. They're usually the hyper-Christians. And what I mean by that is the people who have gotten so far removed from the moment that they found Jesus that they've bought into the lie that following Jesus is all about them. They think church is all about them, and following Jesus is all to make them happy and to meet all of their needs. And usually this is the message where I upset a few super Christians, but I'm going to say this to you. I will preach this message every single year for the rest of our church's history because I really believe it matters so much that we be on mission with what God is on mission about. What will you do that will outlive you? I believe you and I make the decision that we're going to leverage our lives in a way to reach people who are far from Jesus. Now, get us going today. I want to look at an interesting story that's found in the book of John. Now, this story we're going to talk through today is really the longest recorded conversation we have between Jesus and someone else. I'm sure he had lots of long conversations in the years that he was on earth, but we only have one that is the longest recorded in the Bible, and it's this one. To set us up for what we're going to read in just a moment, here's what you need to understand. Jesus was with his disciples, and they had just finished doing some ministry somewhere, and they were making the trek. They were making the journey back to the place they needed to go, and on the way, they had to stop off in an area called Samaria. Now, on the way, Jesus' disciples, they must have gotten hungry because we know that they just kind of pulled off the road for some reason and they went to McDonald's and grabbed something to eat. But Jesus, he kept on trucking along by himself and he went to this area called Samaria. And you need to know this, like in that day, the Jewish people, they looked down on the people of Samaria. That there was racial tensions, socioeconomic tensions. That the people that were Jewish, they just considered themselves better and more elite than the people from Samaria. A good Jewish person would never interact with the Samaritan because they were just better than them. And so if you can imagine all the racial inequality that we've had in our country, all the struggle that has been in existence for years, take all of that and try to apply it to this culture. That's what's happening. And so Jesus is going to pass through that area. And when he gets to that area, he stops outside of the city and there is this well. And there's this interesting story that if you just read it, you kind of miss some of the beauty and the detail, some of the nuance of the story. But Jesus is walking to this area and he sees the well, so he stops. And when he stops, there's a woman there by herself and she's getting water out of the well. Now, again, if you just read through this at a cursory, quick overview, you might miss this detail. But here's what you need to know. People that lived in that time and in that day, they would usually only go to the well early in the morning or late in the evening. And the reason is it was hot. It was hot in that area. The sun, the Middle Eastern sun, would just cook you in the middle of the day. And so they would usually go early in the morning or late in the evening. Beyond that, this was a communal activity, which meant people would always go together. Usually the ladies of the families, they would go together to the well and they would get the water that they need for their family and they would spend the time talking. I mean, it was the ancient water cooler of the day. And they would go and they would get all of their water. But this woman, she was there by herself. Now, why would she be there by herself? It's more dangerous. She would open herself up to attack from someone maybe passing by. But maybe there was something else going on. Maybe she was ashamed to go with the pack of ladies that she was used to going with. Maybe there was some guilt that was holding her back from going. Maybe they knew something about her that she was ashamed that they knew. So she was there by herself. And Jesus rolls up and he sits next to her and he talks to her. Now, this is, again, fascinating when you understand what's happening. First of all, Jesus was a Jew, and he was talking to a Samaritan, so he's breaking cultural norms. And then Jesus says something else by talking to her. You see, in those days, women were seen as lesser than men. Now try to imagine this. The last 18 months or so, it feels like there has been an increased awareness of the way that men have treated women for the last few generations in our country. And women are standing up, and rightfully so, and we should cheer them on, and we should do everything we can to squash inequality in our culture and in our world. Like, men should never, ever leverage the power that they have to be abusive or misogynistic or to aggressively pursue a woman. Like, that should never happen in our culture. But in that culture, men just didn't talk to women. If you weren't married to a woman, you didn't talk to her. Even when you were married, like, you would walk as a man and the women would follow behind you. Like, there was such inequality. So Jesus comes and he sits next to this woman and he talks to her. And if you've been on the fence about following Jesus, here's another reason to follow Jesus. He smashes through all the racial tension, all the stereotypes, and beyond that, he gets rid of all issues between men and women. He puts them on equal playing fields, and he talks to her. And he says to her, he's like, will you get me a drink? And she's like, Why would I get you a drink? She's like, why are you even talking to me? And then Jesus responds to her and he goes, if you'll just get me a drink, I can get you a drink that'll never end. I can satisfy your thirst eternally. Now at this point, this woman's like, what are you even talking about? They were talking about different things. They were seeing this completely differently. She was talking about water, and Jesus was talking about her soul. He's like, I can do something for you that will satisfy your soul forever. And they keep talking, and then Jesus says to her, he goes, I know there's a reason you're here alone. I understand the reason you're here by yourself is that you've been married not just once, but 5 times. And the person you're living with now is not your husband. And this woman is dumbfounded. She's confounded by Jesus. And then the Bible's funny to me. Sometimes you understand a language when you begin to understand the humor of the language. You'll know that you begin to understand the Bible when you understand the humor of the Bible. And Jesus says, like, you've been married 5 times and the dude you're shacking up with now is not your husband. And she looks back at him, and the King James Version of the Bible, the woman says to him, surely I perceiveth thou to be a prophet. It's like, of course it's a prophet. It's Jesus. You are talking to the one who made you, right? Like that's what's happening in this moment. And the woman is so amazed in this moment that she runs off and she begins to tell her friends. She's like, I can't keep what I've experienced right now to myself. Maybe this is the Christ, the Messiah, the Son of the living God. I can't keep what I've experienced to myself. And she ran around the corner and she brings her friends. And normally in a sermon, when we read through this kind of story, this is where the preacher would stop. I heard a sermon one time that was like one of the worst sermons I've ever heard. It was by a really, really young preacher. And the guy read the story and he stopped right there in the story. And he goes, so the moral of the story is don't sin around Jesus because he knows everything. Let's pray. And I was like, what kind of message is that? Whatever. But it's a good thought. Don't sin around Jesus because he's Jesus. And anyway, so let's pray. No. So he goes on. The story goes on, and that's where we're going to pick up now. John chapter 4, we'll start in verse 27. Just then, being Jesus' disciples, they returned, and they were surprised to find him talking to a woman. Again, there's that inequality. They're surprised. He goes on. But no one asked, what do you want? Or why are you talking with her? They're not focused on the same thing Jesus is focused on. Jesus is talking to her about her soul and her eternity. And they were just worried, like, why was he talking to a Samaritan and to a woman? And no one stopped to ask, why are you talking to her? You ever notice when you're in environments of honor, when you're in places of honor, people are always looking for ways that they can serve you. If you go to someone's house and you're a guest, can I get you something to drink? Can I get you something to eat? My mother-in-law might have the greatest gift of hospitality I've ever eaten. She is a full-blooded Italian woman, and she fits every stereotype. Like, you go to her house and she says, can I get you something to eat? And you're like, no, I'm great, thank you. And she goes, okay, I'll just fix you a plate of something. Like, that's how she is. No one does this for Jesus. The disciples roll up on him and they see him sitting here, and no one says, what are you doing? No one asks why. No one asks what's happening. How can we help? How can we serve you? No one gets it because they're not understanding the moment. And then the woman leaves, and this is so important. Then, leaving her water jar, the woman went back to the town. Now pause here for 1 second. We have to get our minds around the significance of this moment. In their homes in those ancient days, they didn't have a faucet to turn on to get water. There was no Brita water filters. There was no refrigerator that you stuck your cup in the door. There was nothing like that. All of your water came from going out to the well, and you would bring the water back in your bucket or in your jar. And so this woman is talking to Jesus. She's having this moment. The disciples roll up, and they're confused by what's happening. And the woman says, I've got to do something. And she takes off and leaves. And I just noticed this. The Bible, the author here notes that she left her water jar. Now, why is that significant? Because that water jar was really a lifeline for her. That was a source of life for her. The only modern equivalent that I could try to explain would be this. Imagine being in a very, very, very crowded restaurant, and you're there with a friend, and something so amazing happens. Something so incredible, so confounding happens to you that you say, I've got to share this with someone. And say you've got something valuable. You've got your purse or your wallet or your cell phone or a computer. This place is loaded with people who would love to lift your wallet or lift your phone, and you just leave it there because what has happened means so much more to you than that thing that you're holding on to. You've experienced something so transformational that what is with you doesn't seem to hold a candle, and you take off and you leave it there. That's what the woman does. This explains how impacting this moment with Jesus was for her. It says she leaves her water jar, and the woman went back to the town, and she said to the people, go on, come. See a man who told me everything I ever did. Could this be the Messiah? Now, we're going to come back to this phrase in a moment, come and see, because this matters so much. He says, come and just see what I've experienced. Come see what I just saw. Come feel what I just felt in my heart. Come experience what I just experienced. You notice she didn't defend it? You ever notice we don't defend the things that we love? We just share them and we invite others to experience and enjoy them with us. I never will apologize for putting up a picture of my family on Instagram. I just won't. One time I had a person say, you post about your family too much. And I said, follow somebody else. You know what I mean? Like, you don't apologize for sharing the things you love. You share them and you invite others to share them with you. You don't defend vacation pictures. You don't defend pictures of your family. You don't defend taking restful seasons. You don't do this. You just celebrate and you invite others to experience, and that is what the woman does. Verse 30 goes on to say this. So they came out of the town and they made their way to him. I just imagine this. Jesus is sitting at the well with the woman. The disciples come up. They're super confused. They don't know what's going on. And then all of a sudden, the woman leaves. She leaves her source of life. She runs into this town, which maybe is just right around the corner. She comes back with a group of people. I don't know if it's 10 people or 50 people or 100 people. But all these people, they just want to see what this woman has seen. They want to experience what she's experienced. That's what's going on. Then verse 31, it just gets weird again. Meanwhile, his disciples urged him, Rabbi, eat something. Rabbi, eat something. And Jesus is like, are you missing this moment? Like, are you missing what's happening here? The disciples roll up. They don't ask what's going on. They're just confused as to why he's sitting with this woman. The woman leaves, comes back with a ton of people, and their response is, yo, Jesus, you want something to eat? Can we get you a sandwich? Like, what is happening in this moment? The disciples don't get it. Verse 32 goes on. But he said to them, I have food to eat that you know nothing about. And the disciples are like, did someone sneak him a granola bar? Like, what happened? What did we miss when we were gone? Jesus is like, here's what's happening, guys. You're thinking of the temporary. I'm thinking of the eternal. You're thinking about the immediate. I'm thinking about that which is ultimate. You're thinking about right now and filling your belly. I'm thinking about filling the gates of heaven. There is something more happening here in this moment. Jesus says, like, what's going on? My food, said Jesus, is to do the will of him who sent me and to finish his work. This is what Jesus was about, and this is what we need to be about. Verse 35. Don't you have a saying? It's still 4 months until harvest, and then pause here for 1 second. Then Jesus drops on them 3 words. And these 3 words are my whole message today. In fact, if you get nothing else, I hope you get these 3 words. Jesus says to them, like, you're not seeing what I'm seeing. We're in the same space. We're in the same moment. We're breathing the same air in this moment, but we're not seeing the same thing. You're seeing the food. You're seeing the lunch. I'm seeing the potential. You're seeing right now. I'm seeing eternity. Jesus says to them, verse 35, I tell you, open your eyes. Open your eyes. Look at the fields. They are ripe for the harvest. Jesus says to them, take off the spiritual blinders. Stop missing the beauty of what God is orchestrating in this moment through the life of this lady. Stop it. Open your eyes. I wonder how many of us, we live our lives with what I would call spiritual nearsightedness. I don't know if you've ever experienced nearsightedness, but some years ago, take this off for me for just a moment. Some years ago, I got really, really bad eyesight. Like, I used to have perfect 20/20 vision. Everything in my life was perfect. I could see the world through clarity. And then over the course of like 12 months, my eyes went from 20/20 to really, really bad. And so someone told me that you can save a few bucks by getting your eyes checked at Sam's Club. And so I made the awesome decision to go get my eyes checked, like one of the most sensitive parts of my body, at a place where you can buy bulk Frosted Flakes, which makes no sense to me at all, but that's what I did. So I go there, and if you've ever had your eyes checked at an optometrist, it's one of the weirdest experiences ever. Because you go in because your eyes aren't working like they should, and what do? They put drops in your eyes to make your eyes work worse than they were working before. They dilate your eyes. Some years later, I went to another optometrist because I wanted to get LASIK eye surgery, which is one of the weirdest experiences you'll ever have. Like, it's what I imagine an alien abduction feels like, but that's a different message. And so, but I go to that place, and they put in drops in my eyes. I'm not kidding you. I couldn't see anything. And I drove there by myself. And so at one point, I had no one with me, and I'm like, I got to go to the bathroom. I walked into the bathroom like this, trying to find a way, and I stood in what I think was a urinal, and I did what I did, and I was like, dear Lord, let this be a urinal. In Jesus' name, amen. Like, I have no idea. To this day, I have no idea what happened in that moment. But then they dilate your eyes and you can't see, and then they do all kinds of other weird stuff. The doctor gets all up in your face, like he's right here in your face. I mean, you can smell what he had for breakfast. He's that close. And he's asking you A or B, A or B. A. And I'm like, I have no idea, bro. They both look the same. And he does it over and over and over again. Then have you ever had the little puff of air in your eyes? Have you had that? No one warned you about that. All of a sudden, it's like, poof, it just feels like it hits you in the face, and that's the worst. And then, anyways, all of these things happen. And after this is all done, my doctor comes back and he goes, well, you got two issues. The first issue is you have astigmatism. And I was like, huh? And he goes, astigmatism means the shape of your eye is wrong. Your corneas are actually too thin. And I'm like, of all the genetic lotteries to win, the thin part of me is my corneas, whatever. Because you got astigmatism. Your eyes are not shaped correctly, and because of that, everything looks blurry to you. And I'm like, that's why I'm here. And he goes, also, you're nearsighted. And I'm like, no, that's not my problem. I can see fine up close. And he goes, that's not what nearsighted means. Nearsighted doesn't mean that. Nearsighted means you can see good up close. It's the far that you have a problem with. And that was so weird. Like, optometry is the only medical profession that names your condition based on what is working. It's like going with a broken foot, and the doctor's like, your hand works good. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't even make sense. But I go in, and he's like, you're nearsighted. And I just got this picture of how many of us, this is our reality. We're nearsighted, which means we can see the stuff up close to us with clarity. It's all the rest of the stuff that we can't see. We can see all of this stuff here and now up close, but we can't see the world around us the way God wants us to see it. I would call it spiritual nearsightedness. This is how I would define it. If God were to answer all of your prayers, would it change the world, or would it just change your world? That's how you'll know you're spiritually nearsighted. If God answered your prayer life, if God came through, God help me, God help me, God help me, you pray all these big prayers. If God answered all of your prayers, would it change the whole world? Would it make a difference in the world? Or would it just make your life more comfortable, a little easier? Would you have a little more money in the bank? Would your husband or your wife start acting the way that you want them to act? Would your kids finally clean their rooms? Like, would it change the whole world? Or would it just change your little world? I'm convinced that so many Christians live their life spiritually nearsighted. Their relationship with God is all about me, me, me. God help me, God bless me, God meet my needs. You can tell you're spiritually nearsighted by the words that are in your prayers. Sometimes the words we pray are, God, me, 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 help me, serve me, meet me, provide for me, take care of me. And when the number one word in your prayer life is me, I would argue that you've missed the point. In fact, I've been having conversations for the last few months with the people who lead worship at our church. I want to make sure that when we worship God, we're singing songs that are about Him, not about us. We sang a song some time ago, and I've started counting the times we said me in one of the choruses, and it was me, me, you did this for me, you helped me, this, me, 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 me. And I'm like, that's not what worship is. Worship is about God. Worship literally means to add worth or value or honor or adoration or praise to Him, not to me. So many of us, we live our lives spiritually nearsighted, where our whole relationship with God is all about me. And I'm pushing you today. I'm challenging you. If you want to change the world, stop making it about you and start making it about Him and about others. So if you're going to pray, if you're going to live a life that makes a difference, if you're going to change the world, here's what you have to do. You have to start praying, God, open my eyes. Jesus says to His disciples, open my eyes. And here's the first thing you can say, God, open my eyes to your plan. Did you know God has a plan to save the world and to change the world? Do you know what it is? It's you. You are God's plan. God's plan was that you and me, through the church, that we would leverage everything we have to reach the people who are far from him, to change the world. That was God's plan the entire time. Look what the book of Ephesians says. Paul says this, his, being God's intent, was that now, through the church, through you and through me, the manifold or the full wisdom of God should be made known. It was always God's intent that through us, people would come to know him. Look what Paul says in the book of 2 Corinthians. He says, we are therefore Christ's ambassadors. What's an ambassador? It's a representative who is in another place on behalf of someone more powerful. That's what an ambassador is. And we are Christ's ambassadors as though God were making his appeal through who? Through us. God's plan the whole time was you and it was me. God's plan A is us and there is no plan B. God, open my eyes to your plan. If you want to change the world, this is how you do it. God, open my eyes to what you see, to your plan. The second thing we have to pray is this. God, open my eyes to lost people. To lost people. Now here's the reality. There's lost people all around us. Statistically in Lakeland and in Brandon, about 80% of people have no connection to a local church. Now I don't know what that means in relationship to the relationship with God, but it's ridiculous how many people we rub shoulders with every single day that have no connection to God whatsoever. And I want to ask you this really difficult question. Do you own the lostness of the people in your life? You say, what does that mean? Well, God didn't put the people in your life on accident. He didn't. So like your kid's teacher, not there on accident. The barista at Starbucks who knows your name because you go way too many times, and like when you walk in, they've got your drink waiting for you because, oh, here comes Bill. Let's get him a triple whatever you get, right? Like they just know that's what's happening. Like that person knows your name, they know your drink order. Do they know the condition of your soul? Have you shared that with them? Like can I give you the best example I've got on this? I just started, about 6 weeks ago, going to a gym at 6 o'clock in the morning. Thanks for noticing, everybody. And I've been doing this. Can I tell you my favorite part? It has nothing to do with weights. God knows it has nothing to do with running. In fact, whoever invented running needs to just get a life, right? Like, it's ridiculous. But the truth is, the reason I love going is because I'm surrounded by all these people now, and I have no idea if they know the Lord or not. I don't really know yet. But you know what I'm doing is I'm building a relationship with them, and I'm going to do everything I can to lead them to come to know Jesus. There's this guy at my gym, his name is Gary, and I really like Gary. He's funny. Gary's the sarcastic guy who says, he says what I'm thinking. Like in our workouts, sometimes the warm-up is more workout than I've ever done in my whole life, and it's just the warm-up. And so we'll do the warm-up, and Gary's like, all right, good workout, everybody, and he wants to walk out, and I just love the guy. Well, last week, I got paired with Gary on a day where we had to do this marathon of workouts, and Gary kept pushing me. So all day, I kept saying, shut up, Gary. Gary, shut up. Gary, no one likes you. Shut up, Gary. So I thought about getting shirts and just say, shut up, Gary, on them. That's what I was thinking about doing. And as I went to, I designed it. And when I got ready to go print it, I felt like God stopped me and said, don't do that because you have a witness to Gary that matters so much more than being funny. Dang, do you own the lostness of people? God sees lost people. Do you? Look what the book of Luke says. Luke says this. Jesus said, for the Son of Man came to seek and save the lost. If we're going to be like Jesus, we have to be on the same mission he is, which is to seek and to save the lost. Quick story for you. Last Thanksgiving in that season, I got invited over to some friends' house and they fried turkeys. I've never had a fried turkey. I think that's God's intention. Like when God made the world and he made turkeys, he's like, put them in oil, somebody. And it was so good. And so I go there because of fried turkey, and my wife had a singing event somewhere else, and so I brought my 3 kids to this house. The house is owned by my really good friends, and they had this party with probably 20 people, and there was a few people who were kind of in and out of the party. Well, my kids loved playing with my friends' kids, and so I didn't really worry about them. They were off playing, and it got to that time of the night where it was time for me to get my kids and go. So I was like, kids, Burns kids, let's go. And my 2 sons, Joey and Gavin, they pop up and they come and they're there. And I'm like, Ella, I've got a 4-year-old daughter. She was 3 then. I said, Ella, let's go. Ella, where are you at? No response. And usually she comes running for me right away, but she doesn't respond. So I run upstairs. Maybe she's upstairs playing in the kids' room. So I run upstairs in the kids' room. Ella, no response. No response at all. I go through every kid's room, no response. I come back downstairs, and as I'm coming down the stairs, with every step down, I feel my heart drop another level deeper and deeper into my gut. Have you ever had this moment before? I have no idea where my precious little girl is, and she means the world to me. Can't find her. So I start screaming a little louder, and as I'm screaming, all of the terrible thoughts start running through my mind of the things we see on the news and on Dateline and on 2020. My heart gets flooded with unbelievable fear. And then, it's like a miracle. I hear Ella, little Ella, she starts yelling, "All done." When Ella goes to the bathroom, when she was little, she would just sit there, and her legs are too little to touch the floor, but she would just kick her legs up and down like this, and she starts yelling, "All done, all done." Sometimes it's like 5:30 in the morning, and she's gone to the bathroom, "All done," and it wakes us up. But I've never been more happy to hear "all done" than I was in that moment when I found her just sitting there, just kicking her little feet up and down on the toilet. And let me tell you what happened. In the moment when I was panicking, I never stopped and thought to myself, no idea where Ella is, but I've got 2 more. I'm good, right? Never did that. Because in that moment, all of my attention was on what was lost, not on what I had. I believe when God looks down from heaven and he sees his creation, he's consumed by who's lost. This is the part that usually ticks some well-meaning Christians off. What about me? Doesn't God care about me? Yes, he cares about you. And yes, he loves you, but if you've ever lost something that matters to you, all of your focus goes to what is missing, not what you have. If you've ever lost your wedding ring, you don't go into your house and say, "Oh, look, I've still got a couch." You don't do that because your focus is on what is missing, right? In the same way, I believe God looks down from heaven and he sees you. If you're found, he loves you, he honors you, he celebrates you. The Bible says he dances over you with songs of joy, but his heart breaks for those who are lost from him. If you're gonna pray, start praying, "God, open my eyes to lost people." The third thing is this: let's start praying, "God, open my eyes to the opportunities. God, help me to see the opportunities you set in my path." Can I tell you something? If you'll pray this, God will rock your world. You say, "What do you mean?" I mean this. I mean, if you start praying for opportunities, God's gonna give you opportunities. If you start praying for opportunities, you're gonna start seeing moments pop up in your life. You're gonna start being surrounded like me in a gym with people, like my wife in a cast of people who are coming together that she doesn't even know when she starts. You're gonna start knowing people in your neighborhood. You're gonna start getting to know people in your life better. And when you pray, "God, help me to see the way you see," to see people who are lost from you and know that it breaks your heart, and you pray for opportunities, God will give you opportunities. Look what the book of 1 Peter says. Peter says, always be prepared. When? Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have. You see, when you're a follower of Jesus, you have something unique, something different from the world around you. You have a hope that so many people lack in this world. Be prepared to give a reason for it. So here's my challenge to you. This season of the year, as we're in the August turning into September season, is one of 3 times every year that God gives us unbelievable opportunities as a church to reach the city and to reach the world around us. The first one is Easter. Every year, if you give people an opportunity to come to church at Easter, 8 out of 10 people say yes in the Easter season. The third one is the Christmas season. People are just they're willing to go to church during Christmas. But you may not believe this, but the third one is actually this season right now. You say, why? Why is that? It's because this is the season when people start getting back into rhythm. In the summers, our lives get out of rhythm. Kids aren't in school. If you're a college student, you're not really in class. Work is different. People vacation in the summers. Summers feel like there's not a cadence. There's not a rhythm to them. But usually once you get past Labor Day, that's when it feels like we got to get back into rhythm. And one of the rhythms people start thinking is, I need to get parts of my life that feel out of order back into order. And church and God are usually 2 opportunities for people to do that. What would it look like if for the next 2 or 3 weeks, we made the decision to have 30 seconds of courage? To say, God, I'm gonna ask you to open my eyes to your plan. Open my eyes to those who are lost around me, and then open my eyes to the opportunities you're providing to me. And then I challenge you to either share your faith or invite people to join us here. You say, "Hey, Jason, what does it matter? How do we change the world? How do we do that?" It's not just going around the world, though that's important. It's not just giving, though that makes a huge difference. It is sharing your life and sharing your faith with the people who break God's heart because they're separated from him. What would it look like if all of us made the decision together? God, I'll risk everything I've got to reach people who are far from you because they matter to you. Who's the person in your life who's far from God that you can, in this season, leverage your life to invite? I'm going to ask you all across this room. I'm going to ask you in Brandon, would you bow your head and close your eyes? In Brandon, I'm going to ask Pastor Judd to come to the front. I'm going to pray for you now. God, I ask you to open our eyes to see the way you see. May we not be like your disciples who are so focused on the temporary, who are so spiritually nearsighted that we can't see what you're doing and what you're about. Help us to see the way you see and to see the things that you care about. And God, may we care about them too. God, may this be a church that changes the world by changing the world of others one at a time, by leveraging our lives to reach people who are far from you. God, I pray for insane courage, faith to rise up in us. And God, as a result, may we see hundreds and thousands of people come to faith in you, Jesus. May we see them take their next step and get baptized and plugged into a community to help them to continue to grow. And God, we thank you that you care about that so much that you sent Jesus for the whole world. Not just for my world or our world, but for the whole world. So God, help us to see the world you see it in Jesus' name.